Topics with a variety of amazing guests. We visit the past. We ponder our future as we exist in the here and now. At This Moment with Angela Black, Thursday evenings, Studio B on Revolution Radio.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome to I Am Nature. Brian Porter here is your host, and this is the show where we talk about solutions to primarily the major eco problems on the planet. And today we're joined by Kosha Joubert, and we'll get to Kosha in a second. And I also want to mention the fact that we have Angela Black as my producer. How you doing, Angela?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. And I just want to mention that to the listeners that Angela also has a show on Thursdays at 10 Eastern. It's called At This Moment. And she's started a new gig where she's doing Wednesdays and Fridays at 4 Eastern. This show is called Zoom In, and she's also got a regular guest called The Crow who analyzes the markets. That's right, Angela?
That's correct. Yes, Zoom In with Angela Black and The Crow. We are part of the Liberation Nation team. So, yes. Indeed. Thanks for the shout out, man. I often give you shout outs as well.
Oh, that's good. I thought I should because, you're such a great producer and you've done so much to help me, and I really appreciate it.
Back at you. I've been thrilled to be a part of your movement, and I'm always impressed with the caliber of your guests, including today's guests.
Oh, yes.
Guest, that is.
Yeah, let's get to Kosha. Now, Kosha Joubert is the president of the Global Eco Village Network. I want to get the site out there right now for all our listeners. The site name is gen.ecovillage.org. Go there. It's unbelievably informative and extremely well put together. Kosha, how are you doing?
Hi, Brian. I'm really well.
Oh,
good
great.
To be here with you tonight.
Well, it's a great privilege for me to have you on. You're right in my, I know you haven't listened to my initial 8 shows. You're number 9. But, you're right in my sweet spot of what I've been talking about with my listeners and with Angela, the importance of changing the way we live, becoming much more sustainable. And one of the solutions that I've been promoting a lot is the eco-village movement. And so I'm so thrilled to have you on because you know more about this stuff than I think probably almost anyone on the planet. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. There's lots of different levels to this movement. And, the people who are really doing the work are the people on the ground who are implementing solutions, creating new ways of living. And then the network, the global network, is drawing these people together on a global level, So while I connect to people from all over the planet, there was a time in my life, and there's many other people that are much more deeply connected to that.
I lost you. Are you there, Angela?
I'm here. We
Did
are
we
still
just lose her?
Yeah, we're still live. Maybe she accidentally muted. She's showing us still here. Kosha, we cannot hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Sorry about that. Where did you lose me?
You can start at the beginning of that sentence. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe just an easy way to say it would be that there is so much knowledge around solutions out there that there's no way any one person could hold it in their minds. And in that way, we're a very decentralized organization, and I'm just one piece in the puzzle. So I hold part of the knowledge.
Well, I think you have some credibility with me because you live in what I consider to be one of the premier eco villages on the planet, and that's Findhorn.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't just move into Findhorn, folks. I mean, you have to be around in the movement for quite some time to be living there. So how did you manage to get a place in Findhorn?
Well, it's been a long journey for me. You know, I grew up my journey. Sorry if I go back a bit here, but my journey starts. Go back.
Yes.
My journey starts in South Africa, and I grew up in the system of apartheid. So in a system that was separating people big time, separating cultures big time. And I think my yearning for cross-cultural communication and community really grew out of that lack and brokenness of community. And in the end, I actually went on a pilgrimage through my own country when I was 23, and I ended up in one of the homelands, Port St. John's. This was in 1991 when Nelson Mandela had just been released. And that's where I ran into my first community. And it was a community of black and white people living together and learning to till the land together, learning to bring up their children together. And for me, it just totally hit me that it was possible to create the new, to create the dream without fighting the old system, because I was very much in the resistance movement at the time. So it actually changed my life, and I've been on a journey through communities, intentional communities and eco-villages ever since then. I've lived for a long time in a quite a radical eco-village in Germany. And as part of the network, I fell in love with my now husband, Robin Alfred, who has chaired the trustees here in Findhorn for the past 7 years. And I moved over because we were in love. So that was my ticket to Findhorn, and a very, very heartfelt one.
So your husband was living in Findhorn, and that's how you managed to get there yourself? By getting... Well, that's
exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you married into Findhorn.
I did. You could do that, you know. It's a great way to build cross connections, you know, everywhere. It's love relationships and marriages. They work all the time. No,
that's a beautiful story. But I mean, it's not an easy place to get into now. I mean, it's been around since 1962. It's my understanding, and so the people that are living there are, you know, it's pretty much full. You know, it's not an easy place to get into. And congratulations. I mean, and how long have you been living in Findhorn?
Well, let me just say a little bit more about that, because, you know, it is totally true that there's something about Findhorn where, you know, it celebrated its 50th birthday 2 years ago. And there's a richness of experience here that is truly amazing, and also an international network of people who come visiting. So it has that quality that many eco-villages have, that you're a bit out on the outskirts, you could say. You know, we're here on the north coast. We're part of the north coast of Scotland. Very, very beautiful nature. Energetic space in which people have been meditating intensely for 50 years. So very beautiful, energetic space. And there is a core community here, which is 120 people who are living in what we call the Findhorn Foundation. And this is a very close-knit community where people share income. They get a pocket money, so it's super intense. And many people step into this inner circle of the community for a phase. But as many of the old communities, it has a huge ring of people that move into the area and are really close around the community and enrich the whole area very much. So there's lots of possibilities of moving into the area of Findhorn, moving close to the community, and also choosing the level of intensity that people want with the community.
Well, no, I mean, it's an extremely mature, and the thing I like most about Findhorn is that it's inspired so many other people to do great things. We were talking about some of the other people that I know, and you knew of Mumta, who was my guest last week. But there's a guy named, you probably don't know Dr. John Apsley, because he visited there way back in the 70s, and he was turned on to become a naturopath, and now he's an expert in regenerative medicine. But it was going to Findhorn and tasting a tomato.
I know, I really want to taste that tomato, just FYI.
Having one plum tomato that made him realize that there's something special about the food at Findhorn. And that it's, you get into the elementals and all that kind of stuff that I believe most people there believe in. Is that not the case?
Well, I mean, Findhorn has gone through many phases over the years, but that's definitely part of the roots of Findhorn that, Dorothy McLean and Eileen Caddy and Peter Caddy moved onto a caravan park together, really led by their inner voices. And especially Dorothy McLean connected very deeply to the nature spirits. She's actually just moved back to Findhorn a few years ago and is in her 90s now, the last surviving founder. And there is a continuous practice here of really taking serious our capacity as humans to connect to what we call nature spirits, the energetic beings of plants that go, and just the invisible worlds that have deeply inspired many of our old human traditions of many cultures. And I think we've lost a lot of the connectedness that we used to have. And it's really ways to intuitively gain connection and information. So there was a time in the early period of the community in the 70s where there was a huge focus on this connection and especially on the growing of vegetables. And sometimes people say that after a first phase, when that was what Findhorn really became famous for, growing the largest cabbages and the most beautiful vegetables and just creating an amazingly paradisical garden on this very, very sandy beach dune ground. But that after that, there was a phase where Findhorn moved to growing people. And, while today we still have immensely beautiful gardens, vegetable gardens, and also flowers everywhere, I think anyone who walks through the Findhorn community will be touched by the beauty and just an energy that the nature here holds, or the human-nature connection. And we also see that many people who come here for the first time find it a totally transformative experience because it unleashes that reconnection to nature. And at the same time, the focus has moved on more on working with nature and people and also connecting to the world.
Yeah, is Findhorn connected to Jen? I mean, did it start with people from Findhorn, people like yourself?
Well, actually, Jen emerged in 1995, so long after the Findhorn community was founded, really from a group of people, very, very interesting couple that was at the core of that are Hildur and Ross Jackson. Hildur is a social scientist, and Ross Jackson was actually an economist who worked with, he developed a system whereby he could, don't ask me too much about it, but he developed a mathematical way of working with how to with exchange rates between currencies, and he decided to use his knowledge to, in a way, harvest money from the global capitalist system in order to invest that in sustainable development. And Hilder and Ross Jackson together created a trust called the Gaia Trust in Denmark. And they decided that they really wanted to support sustainability grassroots movements. And seeing the way that mainstream society was developing, they felt that something needed to be done. This was in the very early 90s. And they invited Robert Gilman, from Canada, and his wife, to do a study on the global eco-village movement and intentional community movement and see where it's at. And they came back, sharing that there is an amazing amount of work happening on the ground everywhere. This work really grows out of the dedication of individuals, people everywhere who feel the longing to really leave the space that they live in a better place for their children and grandchildren and not a worse place. So, and really long for a lifestyle that expresses their love for the planet. So people everywhere on the planet seem to have a very similar calling in this. So while eco-villages the world over are hugely diverse, there's still this core of shared values that they all share. And this was recognized, and it was recognized that it was really important to network these communities, and also to bring in the term of eco-village to refresh what had previously been seen often as hippie communities. So to connect that really to a more serious approach, which was actually being experimented with. So they really supported the beginnings of the Global Eco-Village Network. And in 1995, there was a founding conference that did take place here in Findhorn. Hugely successful. 400 people came. At least 300 more wanted to come, but that was the maximum that Findhorn could hold then and can still hold now. And 10 years ago, we had the 10th year anniversary, again here in Findhorn. And this very year, in July 2015, we're going to have the 20th year anniversary of GEN. And we're again going to celebrate that here in Findhorn with people from all corners of the world. So, if any of the listeners feel hugely attracted, there are still some places open and they can check on the Findhorn website. So there's always been there's been a close relationship, and Findhorn has been a very important member of the Global Eco-Village Network, a core member.
Yeah, I mean, it inspires people to do amazing things, and that's what Findhorn. It's funny because about 3 years ago, I developed a conceptual eco-community, and I didn't even know Findhorn existed. And it's very much like Findhorn, the way it is structured. A farming community, very connected to spirit and nature. I'm sure there's people doing healing there. Is that an aspect of Findhorn?
It's very strong. It's very strong. Yeah. I would say from all the places I visited so far, well, maybe there's a few other places, but there's an amazing expertise and quality of healing that is taking place here. Very, very high level. Yeah.
And is it using more than one modality, or is because mine was called panoptic healing? So you'd have as many modalities as you could find to come together and to learn from each other and to, each have a attempt to heal someone if they came in with a severe problem. And then, that way they would learn, and that way they would see which method was most effective with what issue. Health issue.
Totally. So there's a whole network of healers here that exchange and share, and are also connected with healers in the area that have partly been attracted by the Findhorn Foundation and are living close by. So it's a very, very rich exchange network, but it also expands from like physical healers, energetic healers, spiritual healers, but also to, for instance, a lot of dance and movement. Right at the moment, there's a beautiful tantric workshop that is taking place. But also what we find is that the reconnecting to nature and reconnecting to trust in community in itself often creates the deepest healing processes in humans. So there's the healing of the more physical, but then there's also the healing of what we could call the lonesomeness of the soul that many people suffer from at this time in this world. And there's a healing of that happens in people when they visit Findhorn.
Yeah. My tri-energetic philosophy is we need to have three vital connections: one to nature, one to spirit, some positive form of spirit, and the other, the one that's missing the most, is to each other, to community. And when you have those three in line, then you're probably going to be a healthy person, vibrant, creative, and you'll make the most of your native abilities. This is my philosophy of life.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, I mean, I could talk to you for 2 hours about Findhorn. I'm just so happy that it exists and that it's doing so much good for the planet. But let's get back to Jen and the great work that they're doing. It's just one like flower coming from a beautiful garden called Findhorn. Ecolese. Now, this was mentioned in your bio on the site.
If I may, too, it's gen.ecovillage.org for everyone.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. gen.ecovillage.org. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Angela. So Ecolese. Now, this was mentioned in your bio. Can you expand on that a bit?
Well, this is something that's been growing just in the past years that, because the Global Eco-Village Network is really based on the belief that as human communities, we can take our future into our hand and change our reality. It's something that we can't easily do by ourselves. We need other people and, small groups of people. We can change a lot. We can become inspiring beacons of hope for entire regions or countries. So it's really very deeply steeped in community-based, community-led approaches to change. And we've always felt a close connection to the permaculture networks because we work from the same design principles. So permaculture design is really a part of eco-village design as we see it. And then also the transition network movement that started growing like 10 years ago probably, is very closely related again to Jen. And we also speak a lot about eco-village transition at the moment. Well, in the first 10 years, Jen was mainly related to intentional communities. In the past 10 years, Jen has become more and more related to traditional villages, urban neighborhoods that are transitioning to becoming eco-villages. So not newly founded settlements, but existing settlements transitioning. So there's a natural, very close connection also to the transition network. And of course, a lot of like-minded movements. We really see ourselves as part of a whole alliance of movements that are working in this area. And especially in Europe, so Ecolese was born in Europe, from an alliance between these networks, an alliance that happened on the level of the EU, but also with different scientific institutions and organizations like Gaia Education, the educational arm of Jen, that are coming together to say, this is a movement that wants to support and strengthen community-led change-making in our societies, community-led transition to resilience of our societies. And we want to start influencing politics also on the EU level. We want to influence scientific research. So building an alliance that is stronger than any one of our organizations by itself would be, and that is what Ecolese is. So it's an international NGO based in Brussels that brings together these different networks.
Now, Mumta last week spoke about the ECI. Are you trying to use the ECI to influence the political system in Europe?
Yeah, we might. You know, there is definitely, at the moment, we're actually supporting the Earth Rights work that they're doing, and we're supporting that through the GEN networks. But there is an interest in, for instance, the way that legally our societies are organized. They often see the family as a social component, and then cities, local authorities. But there's there could be a lot more support for cooperatives and also communities that share social services within the community, and to recognize these kind of approaches more deeply. So there is a relationship, there's a possibility that we might work with it in the future, and at the moment we're supporting the Earth Rights strategy around this.
And can you explain what Earth Rights is? And just for the listener, ECI is European Citizens Initiative. It's a way of putting legislation or through the European Parliament. It's so it's a vehicle that people have at their disposal, but only in Europe, not over here in North America. Okay, so what's this Earthworks?
Earth Rights.
Earth Rights, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Mumta spoke about it, I'm sure, at length in last week's program. But
the rights of nature is
the rights of nature. Okay, I'm mixing it up with Yes.
Okay.
You call it Earth Rights. She calls it rights of nature. Okay.
Yes. We're speaking about the same thing. It's in many countries it's called Earth Rights. In some places it's called rights of nature. It's the same thing.
Okay. I get those two things mixed up, but it's the same thing. Oh, that's
what
great.
you got me for. I'm quick.
Thanks, Angela. Great to have you here.
I'm just thrilled to be listening to all this wonderful knowledge and your insights. So both of you, it's a great show so far.
Thanks.
And we do have a break coming up in just a minute or so.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Great.
Here it is.
So we'll be back with you in a minute. Kosha, thanks so much.
Everyone, You're listening to Brian Porter.
Thanks.
I Am Nature. We'll be right back.
Nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What do we do in life? It goes in eternity.
Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson, 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on Revolution Radio.
Here we free ourselves from the God spell, transform the perverted matrix to the divine one. We become conscious and we embrace universal, unlimited love.
We feature colorful guests and topics such as extraterrestrials, ghosts, interdimensionals, and aliens. We examine evidence, anomalies, archaeological ruins, and anthropology.
We explore past lives, future lives, life between lives. We get into astral projection, near-death experiences, archetypes, visions, and dreams.
Episodes include time travel, teleportation, counseling, spirituality, tantra, relationships, peace, shamanism, peak experiences, and ego transcendence.
Join the lessons Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com for The Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love.
Wadiya will remain a dictatorship. Oh, be quiet. Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
We are back.
Welcome back. Are we back, Angela?
Yes, we're back. The studio's been popping in and out, but we are here. Yes, live.
Wow. Perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're back with Kosha Joubert. Now, Joubert is a French name, is it not, Kosha?
Yeah, it comes from the French Huguenots who went down to South Africa in the 17th century.
Okay. So you probably speak like 4 languages like most vastly more intelligent Europeans?
Yeah, of course. We need that to survive here, don't we?
Oh, that's fantastic. So what do you speak? French, French, German? Let me guess. French, German, Spanish, and English.
And Dutch. And Afrikaans,
Dutch.
Of course. But Afrikaans is very, very similar to Dutch.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it's the advantage of living in a multilingual world. Okay, now, so you've lived in 3 different eco-village settings. If you wouldn't mind contrasting and comparing them and just sharing with the listener what it's like to live in an eco-village. I'm not even sure have you ever lived in a normal a normal place in your whole life? Like me, I live in Ottawa, Toronto.
Well, I mean, I grew up in different places, but definitely also lived in quite a few cities, like mainly in South Africa, Durban, but also later. Actually, I studied in Amsterdam. I wouldn't say Amsterdam was a normal place to live in, but very interesting place to live in. I enjoyed all of them. And I think I'd like to contrast the main 2 eco-villages, the one that I've lived in Germany for 11 years and Findhorn. That feels like it could be interesting. So I moved into the eco-village of Siemlinnen in Germany in 1999. I stayed there for around 10 years, 11 years. And I moved in when my daughter was 3 months old and my son was 3. And, I think the best way to describe life there for me as a young mother who was aware of what's happening in the world is to call it a space for luxurious simplicity. Because imagine having a space where, firstly, that the way you're living is not destroying the future of your children. That's an amazing feeling to have as a mother. It changes everything. And I think many of us don't fully have that feeling in our lives, and it's very, very painful. even on an unconscious level. So having that feeling is amazing. But then also, usually all the eco-villages I know have a car parking space that's at the edge of the village, and then have have large car-free spaces that, kids and everyone else can roam in freely with very little dangers. So that's delicious for a mother. But also the fact that it's a close-knit community, that I know the other adults, we know the other children, so it's a very safe environment to let my children be in. Children have more than one adult. They have actually loads of adults that they can relate to. Lots of grandmothers, grandfathers, fathers, mothers, lots of other people that they can get help from, spend some time with. So for a mother, it's just the most amazing support system that you could dream of. And I think all young mothers dream of such a support system.
Yeah, it not only takes a village, it takes an eco-village.
Exactly. But not only, let's not stop there. I just want to sing the praises of community life for a young mother for a while, because it meant so much to me, and I still feel so grateful, also for the way my kids have turned out because of it, But there's the healthy food, so every eco-village has a focus on healthy local food production, organic food production, usually integrating permaculture approaches, but very often also simply the traditional agricultural approaches that are in the culture where the eco-village is, be it Asia, Africa, Latin America. Most of the traditional agricultural methods bring a lot of wisdom that are very closely related to what permaculture teaches. So there's a lot of wisdom there, and then we combine it with innovative solutions to really come up to speed. But really having healthy local food, having a closed water cycle where I know what kind of water I'm drinking, where it's going to, what I'm feeding my kids, where the compost is going to, where the land that we walk on is our land. We bought into it, so it's organized as a cooperative and it's owned collectively. So, we all grew up, or we lived there, and my children grew up knowing that it was around 100 hectares. You probably don't do hectares, but I don't do acres so well. So 100 hectares of forest lands, agricultural lands, building land. My children grew up roaming these lands, knowing this is our land. We are the caretakers. But also watching the land change over the 11 years that I lived there, from pretty much a monoculture forest and also monoculture agriculture to growing biodiversity, enrichment of the ecosystems, watching the insects, watching the birds move in, the hedgehogs, the bunnies, just watching regeneration of nature and the joy that brings, So all of that was my experience in Siem Linen. And I would just like to add one more thing was, we had a food cooperative. So the food was bought in and is bought in this eco-village collectively. So the gardeners are paid together. The food is kept directly from the garden. It goes into a cellar. And anyone who's a member of the community and of the cooperative can go into the cellar and take as much food as they need, vegetables, all the simple necessities of everyday life. We also have a little organic shop that gives the luxurious extras. But what this means is that because everyone buys in the food collectively, it really doesn't matter where you eat. You can eat in the community kitchens, you can eat in private kitchens, but it also means that the kids can roam the village and eat in different households. Everyone can eat in different households, and you're always basically eating your own food. So there's not any added cost to having loads of guests around, which is actually a huge incentive for open, generous households. And, the beauty of watching my kids grow up in a close-knit tribe of children was just amazingly precious to me. And we see now, that my son is 18 now. He's actually just traveling the Global Eco-Village Network. I'd love to share a little bit more about that. And my daughter is 15. And, watching also the social skills that they've learned from community life is really rich. So that's a little bit about Siemlinden, this eco-village that I lived in Germany. And maybe I'll just make a little break here.
Quick question, Kosha. Were you a single mother living there at the time?
Actually, I wasn't at all. I'm sorry if it sounds like that, but I was in a lovely partnership. We did break up, though, and this is what happens to lots of couples, just the pressure of having children. Actually, we broke up after an 11-year relationship when my kids were around 4 and 7. And this is another thing, just the holding that a community can give in such a situation, both for the kids and for both parents, in case a relationship breaks up. So both the father and I remained in the community. We had chance to take a little bit of distance. The community comprises of about 140 adults, plus children. So we had enough space to take some space from each other, lick our wounds, and rebuild our friendship, so that now we are really the best of friends. The children didn't need to lose or choose to stay with either of their parents, so it's a very healthy environment also for changing relationships.
Yeah, Michael Baker, he set up the community called Old Hall in south of London. It's an intentional community. He was a guest, and he spoke about how they helped the couple go through a breakup, and how we tend to push things too quickly. But he said it took about 6 months for all the wounds to heal, and that the community was very supportive, both parents. And I said, it sounds a hell of a lot better than the divorce lawyers court system we have going on now in mainstream society. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely. I think it's a huge benefit, especially for the well-being of the children, but also for both of the adults. And I think the children learn so much from watching their parents go through the pain of separation and then watch them rebuild friendship. That is a great learning to go through, also for their own friendships and relationships.
Yeah, so it sounded like you lived in an extended family where pretty much everyone was either a parent to someone or a brother or a sister.
Or in a love relationship.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds pretty optimal. I mean, I think this is the way we lived, and there are a few people still living this way, few peoples that still live under this sort of system, and there seems to be something in the universal mind pushing us back in this direction. Do you agree?
Totally. I think that we have wanted to go through the liberation and into individualization. And, this is a natural part of human evolution. And today, the communities that we build are not about becoming a communal being, losing our individuality. In contrast, it's about becoming more fulfilled individuals, unfolding our potential more fully as natural parts of a community where we can actually learn also from the feedback that we receive from others. The lonesomeness that people live in, what we call individual freedom, and often it's individual prisons that we move in, from working places to living places that are all pretty isolated in front of computer screens. So we lose out on so much interhuman richness. And, for me, I think the community life was the deepest personal schooling that I've gone through, and the communities don't work if they don't have a very rich interhuman space at the core of them, and community mechanisms and methods and processes that keep building and refreshing the trust, which is, I would say that the trust within community is the most valuable asset of any community. The more trust you have between the members of a community, the freer you are to both unfold individual potential, but also to act together in truly collectively intelligent ways. So, having processes that really support that is hugely important for communities. But I deeply believe that we lose out on so much if we don't have this richness of a web of relationships around us, of people who can see the parts of us that we are blind to, and that give us feedback in a way that we can really take in and grow from, but also allow us to give feedback. And so we become more transparent to ourselves and each other as we mature together. This is the experience that people often have in communities. And added to that is the dimension of cross-cultural richness and diversity, but most importantly also cross-generational richness and diversity, because I think so often in modern society we tend to either move in our own blood families, which are not always the easiest places to move in when they're too isolated, but also we move within our own age groups, and there's really a great loss of richness in that also, so it's truly wonderful to have the deep, intimate exchange between different generations that happens in eco-villages. All of that is just, as Angela already mentioned, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to look after any one relationship. It takes a village to create a full-filled human being. There's a saying the concept of Ubuntu, which comes from South Africa, which expresses I am because you are, which is a very deep African wisdom.
Yeah. I was thinking that you probably know Michael Tellinger. I'm just guessing, but I would think that you might know him.
Who? Sorry?
Michael Tellinger, the Ubuntu. Michael Tellinger, the ancient, what would we call him, archaeologist. And he's head of the Ubuntu movement right now on the world stage.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to look that up. I actually don't know him. Great.
No? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, no. You mentioned Ubuntu, so I thought you might know him. But, I mean, the philosophy has been around way before Michael Tellinger picked it up. So, not knowing him is no big deal. I mean, it's been around for millennia, right? Yes. So he picked up on it, and he's making it a worldwide movement. It's pretty cool, actually. Okay, let's just. I asked you contrast. I sort of we got a little off track here in my questioning, but it's all my fault. You were contrasting this place in Germany. What's the English translation of the name of this German village?
Siebenlinden. It's the 7 linden trees. It's
Beautiful.
There's it's the linden tree is one of the trees that were traditionally planted at the center of villages or communities, and they symbolize actually community connection. And this was an old homestead where there used to be 7 linden trees in front of the house. So that's where the name comes from.
Okay. So now we're going to contrast the 7 linden trees, eco-village, with Findhorn. It sounds to me like they're quite different.
Yeah, I mean, just the German eco-village was quite radically ecological and had its root from people who said, we have to do something about our ecological footprint. And they actually brought it down to 30% of the German average. So, the root of the eco-village was very much from the ecological and social justice movement. Well, the root of Findhorn was very much a spiritual one, so starting from a different entrance point. So when you come to Findhorn now, the community in Germany is now 20 years old. The community in Findhorn is 50 years old. That's a huge difference. You see the maturity of the people, of the community, definitely much more depth, but also the spiritual root that is really at the heart of Findhorn. Very much the practice, for instance, of attunement, that whenever a meeting starts or anything starts in Findhorn, that we always start with a moment of attunement to really come together, connect to the higher intention of what we are planning to do next. And then we start. And also in that moment of connecting to higher intention, seeing whether there's any piece of information that comes from deeper parts of ourselves that we wouldn't just connect to from a rational mind, but from the invisible worlds, or also from the parts in ourselves that we don't usually connect to, that bring important aspects into the situation. So it's very much at the core of life in Findhorn to have this constant connection beyond the mental realms. So, while the German context is much more, does come from a more mind approach, and then grew more and more into mindfulness and also including more and more spiritual aspects. That's really the root of where Findhorn comes from. Findhorn grew in a much more haphazard way. Eileen Caddy, if you'd asked her, she got very early on in a meditation, she got the information that Findhorn would become a community that was visited by thousands of people. And, she was not a person who loved to be at the center of many, many people. She was a quiet person who liked to go inside and listen to the voice within a lot. So it wasn't her conscious choice. This is what happened. And her husband, Peter Caddy, who really brought the core phrase of work is love in action. He was much more a man of action who was all about connecting, bringing your action in alignment with divine intention. That was his core energy that he brought. And then Dorothy McLean, who brought this deep connection to the nature spirit. So the triad and their different approaches very much formed the community of today. Many of the ecological infrastructure is possibly less...
we have another break coming up, Kosha.
Oh, totally. I'll get back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everyone stay tuned. It's I Am Nature with Brian Porter and guest Kosha Joubert.
Welcome back to I Am Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and we have an amazing guest on with us today, Kosha Joubert. But before we get back to our discussion, I'd like to explain why we're all here, why we have the opportunity to even be here, to have such great chats. It's because we have a network called Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and there are people out there that actually support us. This is the largest listener-supported internet radio station on the planet. And so I have to put it out there to all of us, all of you listening right now, that I'm looking at the Support Us section on our webpage. You go to home and you go over, scoot over 4 titles and you see support us, and I'm just going to go through all the great opportunities they have. They have monthly support club, so you can make a monthly donation auto-debited probably from your credit card. Yes. We have our heirloom seed packs, single season, jumbo, emergency, and community garden seed packs. They're all listed there. They range in price from $60 to $200. All great ways to create some food security for yourself and your community. We have a $5 personal chat room icon. So if you want to be prominent in the chat room, pick up your own personal icon. And then, here's another great way to get to contribute to the station. If you have a cause, a business, whatever, you can have a banner ad put up every month at the top of our website for only $25 US. So there you go. Those are some of the main ways of contributing to freedomslips.com. And I hope that everyone out there listening is going to make a concerted effort to do so in the near future. So now let's get back to our show and our guest, Kosha. Now, Kosha, we were chatting about you were contrasting your experiences at the 2 main places you've lived, Findhorn and 7 linden trees, is my translation of the German eco-village. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, contrasting those 2 experiences?
Well, I could just go a step further to look at all the eco-villages that I've visited on the planet and just the richness, also the cultural diversity of each of the eco-villages. There are some qualities that are recurrent, like, local food production, renewable energy systems, local water solutions, green building, social skills, people skills, integration of people with special needs. There's just many, many recognizable factors, and at the same time, the cultural diversity is just so rich. We already spoke about the concept of Ubuntu, and we actually see that intentional communities in Europe have so much to learn from some of the traditional communities transitioning into eco-villages in the global south, where, for instance, a depth of solidarity is still alive that we really don't know anymore in that depth. So, yeah, huge cultural diversity in the network, and that is part of the richness. But maybe we can leave it there for now.
Okay. Well, no, it's how many actual full-fledged eco-villages are part of your network?
Well, we reach out to around 10,000 villages in around more than 100 countries. So it's a pretty large network. We don't call many of them full-fledged, we're just all on the path.
Right.
But,
I thought that, I looked at you have this awesome map of, you call it the Eco-Village map, and I thought that there were tiers. You have different designations. You have like 8 different designations of types of villages.
Yes.
Or communities, be they, like a Findhorn versus community garden, right? But they're all part of this amazing network where everyone helps one another and shares information and gets support from each other and all this great kind of stuff.
Absolutely. They're all eco-village projects. We even have the ones that are on the move. So eco-caravans, there's some projects in South America, for instance, where people have been traveling on a bus for 20 years with a changing community of 20 adults on board, sharing information about ecology and social skills through theater plays and art. So there's many different kinds of eco projects, very, very rich diversity, and all of them are part of the network. And some of the projects that are part of the network are also networks in themselves. So our network is made up of national networks, for instance, of eco-villages. Like the Swedish network has 80 eco-villages that are a part of it. Some networks are networks of traditional villages. For instance, we have a traditional village network in Orissa in India, which comprises 4,000 villages, and they have their own indicators by which they decide which of their villages they call eco-villages and which are villages but don't yet deserve the designation of eco-village. So their estimate is that they have around 2,000 eco-villages in their 4,000 village network. So, it's very different kinds of networks also that are part of the whole.
Exactly. Okay, I think, Angela, is Bruce here? Or I'm not seeing
yes,
him.
Bruce McDonald has joined the call.
Oh, okay. Oh, I've dropped.
Oh, I guess he is dropped. Oh, he dropped. Here he is.
Maybe we try to pick him back up.
All right, let me put him in. See.
Bruce McDonald is a friend of ours who's, well, actually, we've been talking with Bruce about setting up an eco-village in Costa Rica. And
he's here now.
Bruce, are you with us now?
I am.
Oh, awesome.
Bruce,
well,
Kosha,
great to have you on the show.
Bruce.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you. Hi. Yeah, I have been aware of Findhorn for about 30 years, since my late teens, early 20s. I had a friend whose uncle used to go there for a month every year. He was a physics professor at a Canadian university. So he just loved it. He went with his wife a month a year, and I used to hear these stories, and at 19 and 20, I could hardly believe them. Is it true that they grow unusually large produce there?
Yeah, we had that point earlier in the conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to repeat.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. But basically, those were the seeds of Findhorn, and sometimes it's said that that's really what was needed to get Findhorn totally started. So at the beginning, that was really where the focus was. And over the years, there is still the deep connection to the nature spirits, and you can see it. I think anyone can feel it when you visit the gardens here, that there's a very special connection to nature here. But I think the focus has gone from growing vegetables to growing people in the past 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about how one of these eco-villages gets started. And I don't mean spiritually or by intent. Mm-hmm. I mean logistically. Like, is it a farmer who just decides one day he doesn't want to farm anymore and he wants to live in a small community of 200 people? Do people buy the land together? Like, how do they get started? Findhorn, I know it's an extremely unique instance, but drawing on your position now in the global eco-village community.
Yeah, so, I was saying to Brian earlier that tonight is also a special night for me because it's late night here where I am in Scotland. But after the call, I'm actually going to send off the manuscript to a publisher for a book that will come out this summer, which is the description of around, 35 different eco-village projects around the world and how they were founded. So I've just been editing and reading these descriptions of founders from each continent, like around 6 from each of our continents. So really Latin America, Africa, Asia, Australia, all over the world, USA, Canada, Europe, Russia. Very, very amazing. So I'm very rich on different founding stories at the moment, right this moment. And, I think one factor that stands out is that there's often a moment where a person is hit by a really strong insight, intention, vision of the importance of creating community, of building a healing space. And very often it's like a deep inner voice that speaks to them, and a really strong inner calling. And I think without such a strong inner calling, it's really hard to do, because it definitely, building an eco-village means that you need to walk the road less traveled. You know, it's not on the main streets. You don't find eco-villages on the main streets of society, and we're working on making them more visible, but still, you don't find eco-villages on the main streets. You have to go off, you know, it's more the Alice in Wonderland or the Harry Potter reality, you know, where there's like a wow, you know, there's all this happening as well. I had no idea. We read everything about the problems, but we don't know about the solutions. So how to start one of these places up? So very strong vision. And then what we see, you know, there's not one recipe except for total dedication. But what we do see is that it's often helpful to start with a small core group. So really build from the founding seed to a small core group. And usually we say, you know, core group of, say, 7 or 9, but not too big. And see that you can, that you find coherence around core principles in this core group before you allow it to grow too big. Because, you know, it's actually relatively easy to go into a city and say, who's interested in building community? And you can have meetings with 100, 200, 300 people, you know, but it's really hard to come from that to an action-oriented group that can actually put something on the ground. So it's helpful to start with a core group. And then what we see, you know, is that the way they're being started is actually changing through time. So today we see that people go from a much closer connection, work from a much closer connection to other sectors of society. So 20 years ago, when eco-villages were founded, they were often founded like off in the woods, seeing themselves also as islands, as very, very different places. And also often founded actually on pieces of land that belonged to someone. I think the learnings from there have really been that private ownership is not a good basis for an eco-village, and cooperative ownership is much, much better. But I think what's happening in the newer generation of eco-villages is actually that they're being created in close relationship often to existing villages, communes. So just to give one example, the eco-village of Hurdal in Norway, you know, they worked for a long time before, from Oslo, before they found a good space where a village could be built. But they built it in very close connection to the commune of Hurdal, the community, you know, the normal little town of Hurdal. And the town of Hurdal really welcomed them because, you know, many towns are actually very interested in a more sustainable development and more organic local food production, renewable energy systems. You know, eco-villages are incredibly inspiring demonstration sites. So we see more and more, it's helpful if you can build that kind of partnership alliance with an existing town, village, area, and allow yourself to be more welcomed than was possibly the case 10, 20 years ago. You know, the political climate has really changed. And with the Sustainable Development Goals growing out of the UN this year, you know, we have a different support that we can sometimes meet in broader society. I'll give back to you because I know I carry on a bit, just to ask more precisely, Bruce.
Well, thank you.
Before I can...
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about the economics. Obviously, there would be an internal economy that would meet 80 or 90% of human need. But how do they sustain themselves in a limited way with the traditional, you know, money-based economy? How do you buy a tractor? Yeah. How do you buy a tractor? I mean, we're sourcing our seed over here, and we need about $2,000 worth of seed just to start, or actually about $6,000, depending on how many hectares we want to plant right out of the gate. And you know, how does that stuff get all divided up? Like, does yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this used to be the weakest points, and I think it still is one of the weakest points of the eco-village movement. That
we're having an echo. If everyone can mute while Kosha speaks.
Great, thanks, Angela. That there is sometimes eco-village bring an approach of money is dirty, and I think, of course, the way we use money and the interest rates connected to the money and the economic system that we have at the moment is very destructive in many ways. But still, in itself, money is not dirty. It's a flow of energy. And we need to learn how to play with it, become more playful with it. So the whole economic dimension, we always say eco-village design is holistic design. It comprises all 4 dimensions of the social, cultural, ecology, and economy. But very often economy is kind of the weak spot of many eco-villages. And I think this is, again, something that's shifting right now. Gen International is actually very deeply involved currently with an EU project that is about marrying your love for the planet with your ability to make a living. And this is also important in individual eco-village design. So as you have identified, Bruce, building an eco-village requires funds, and it requires, usually it's really helpful to have some people in your eco-village group that are not afraid of business and not afraid of dealing with funds. And what we see is that there's more and more people who are willing to fund, also to invest in eco-village as sustainable development projects. I really believe that the legal system.
If I can just pipe in with one question there.
Please.
When you say invest, do you mean spiritually, seeking spiritual remuneration, like giving to charity? Or when you say invest, do you mean Donald Trump, I want to get a return on my money?
Well, both of that, but we do see that we have people who are willing to invest with no or very low interest rates, for instance. So I think, you need to have a spread, economic diversity. Diversity is really the base of any system that is strong. So to have, I'm thinking, for instance, of the eco-village of Zeg in Germany. It's called the Center for Experimental, anyway, it's a very German term, but Zeg in Germany. And they're based on lots and lots of loans given by friends of the community. So they have a whole network of funders that are not living in the community, but supporting the community. And it's like possibly 30, 40 funders. And they all put in sums of money with very, very low or no interest rates. This is of huge benefit to the community because it makes them independent from bank loans or those kind of interest rates. But also then through a cooperative, really having a very clear financial arrangement where each member does bring in a part of money, and you also have the possibility to bring economic justice between people who own a lot and people who bring very little. I'm thinking of another example of an eco-village close to Stellenbosch University in South Africa, Lyndoch Eco-Village, which is possibly the eco-village that I know of with the biggest, built on the biggest social and economic inequity. And the way, from university professors to cleaners to really huge diversity, and such a beautiful way of organizing that, again, coming from the learnings of apartheid in a way that empowers everyone to be a full part of the system, very, very well designed with different rent scales, different ways of investment. So, I think at the core of what I'm saying is this fearlessness around economic design and dealing with funds, knowing that there is a lot of money out there that is waiting to be invested in sustainable development. You know, there is so much money out there that is being invested in unsustainable development, and we really need to move that over. So not be afraid to attract sums of money and to work with them in clever ways and create intelligent designs, you know, use permaculture design also for the financial design of your eco-village.
Yeah. Can I just get a question in here, Bruce? Can you give us, is there a place where we can find out who likes to lend money to people who want to set up a eco-village? Because that's sort of what you're alluding to. Foundations that might be amenable to doing this, whatever.
You know, for me, this has always been very personal. So, you know, I know there's even pension investment schemes that are looking for more sustainable investment. And I think if eco-villages can offer very clear business plans, there is definitely a possibility there. But my approach and experience has always been what we call empowered fundraising, that at the core of it is a network of personal relationships. So it's about, you know, you asking those people closest to you that you know and building a network. It's not about asking, it's about offering meaningful engagement and connectedness, belonging to people. So it's very a rich network of personal relationships.
One of the ideas I had to go to my friends is an agriculture bond for 2 to 3 years, just like a federal bank instrument, and I pay 4.5% on it, which is way better than any safe fund, no risk fund is paying these days. Money is almost being given away from at the central bank level. They call it quantitative easing, whatever that means. But yeah, that was one idea I had, was to write bonds. But if they're not secured, but if there's people who would be willing to take on such a bond at 4 or 4.5%, unsecured, meaning that it's not underwritten by an insurance company or anything. Maybe that is a good idea. But I find, and I am the person with the business responsibilities in this emerging co-op, and I feel like Atlas with the world on my shoulders. It's and nobody wants to think about the economic dimension. I don't either. I want to think about the fruit trees we're going to have in 4 years, but I'm forced to think about these things. And it's you got to be very creative. Like, where is the money going to come from? How do you pay back investors? And all of these sorts of things.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, this is where networks are so great, and that's also part of the function of the Global Eco-Village Network, You should really come to one of our conferences, because that's where you can meet up with all the other guys and women that are like you, that this is what they're thinking about, and they're of huge importance to their communities, and they can get, it can be a bit heavy on your shoulders. So it's really important to exchange with the other people out there. How have you done it? And it's best done in a person-to-person exchange. That's where you can hear all the details and intricacies of different pathways and different models.
Yeah. Now, another area of questioning I had was, the United Nations is for this. There is a lot of emphasis on sustainable development now. But at a municipal, provincial, or state level, as you look at these eco-villages in different countries, is there any blowback from government? Because, at the end of the day, you're taking a person out of the mainstream economy who is not transacting. And the government has, what the mafia calls a VIG on every one of those transactions, a sales tax, whatever. And I see a lot of this south of the border in the United States, being Canadian, where they're really getting, to the point where you're going to need a permit to have a backyard garden.
Well, that's a great and inspiring question. I just want to make sure, are we about to slip into the next break? How much time do I have to answer before we
You've got about a minute to discuss the politics of eco-village development.
Okay, so I'd love to continue here after the break. I think it's such an interesting point. Just before we go into the break, I just want to say that we have, for instance, the Senegalese government that has an official eco-village program to transition 14,000 of their 28,000 eco-villages, traditional villages, to eco-villages. So we're seeing more and more political support, actually, for eco-village approaches. For the simple reason that this is an amazing way to support communities to thrive, to support communities to take care of natural, cultural, social heritage of a country. So much is being lost and eroded at the moment at a very, very rapid speed. And any good governance is actually aware of the fact. And if they have the well-being of their people and of the nature in the country at their heart, I think any government would support eco-village development on a bigger scale. And we're seeing that happening in a few countries at the moment. So it's, you know, if we just look at the south of Europe at the moment, where many economies are really unbalanced, and there's huge youth unemployment.
I think we're going to go. We'll pick this up after the break, Kosha. It's awesome
cool
information. Okay.
Great.
Welcome back to I Am Nature, and we have Kosha Joubert here talking about everything you need to know about setting up an eco-village. I mean, she's just an amazing resource. I've got to get her back on. I mean, there's just no way I have time to ask her all the questions I wanted to ask her. Bruce, are you still with us?
I am.
Oh, great. Okay. You just didn't respond to my text in the joint conversation.
Yeah, I actually sent you a text as well, Bruce. And yeah, it's a great show. So glad that you were able to join Bruce and meet with Kosha as well as Brian. It's just an amazing network that you pulled together, Brian. I'm always impressed.
Thank you, Angela.
Of course.
I mean, it's what it's all about. I mean, we got to get the good people together, working on issues, and this whole world's going to turn around. I'm so impressed with people like what Kosha is doing. And so, Kosha, do you want to pick up on Bruce's question about the extent to which the mainstream of politics is either in favor or against the development of sustainable eco-villages?
Great. Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Bruce, for bringing this question up. And it's really fun being on the show with you. I'm enjoying myself. Great to share. Well, you know, I think what we're seeing in the past 10 years is more and more people in all sectors of society really waking up to the urgency of the situation and the need to do something. And what we're also seeing is like people like the president of the International Panel for Climate Change declaring very clearly that the incentive for change or the real change is not coming from those in power, those in politics. It's coming from the people on the ground. That's where a lot of the real energy for actual change comes from. You know, they have nothing to lose. So the awareness about this is growing. You know, just I want to give one different example. You know, when I was at the United Nations, the climate change meetings in Copenhagen quite a few years ago, I actually met some people from the German Foreign Ministry who were deeply involved in the climate change negotiations. And they came out of those negotiations so deeply disappointed. You know, many really good people go into politics with the aim of doing something good for the world or good for their people, and then become very disappointed by the impossibility of actually acting out their ideals to the full. So he came out of that deeply disappointed. He saw some of our presentations about the International Eco-Village Network, the Global Eco-Village Network, and he said, I want to support you. So actually, since then, Jen, and over those years, we've seen the emergence of the African networks, the African eco-village networks. And we've had quite a lot of support from the German Foreign Ministry, from the climate funds of the German Foreign Ministry, for instance, for the work of Jen in the past years. You know, who would expect that? It's amazing, you know. And this is because of a few and now a whole group of really good politicians that actually appreciate the kind of work that we do. We're also now being funded by the environmental ministry in Germany. So that's another example. I brought the example before the break time of the Senegalese government, where there used to be a network of 45 traditional villages in Senegal who transitioned to eco-village. So this happens in a way that, the village itself says, actually, we see that our village is not growing in the way that we would like to see it. Many villages find that their lands are, the soil is eroded, that the water is often polluted, or its desertification is happening. They see that there is deforestation that has happened. So, the future is not so bright, and villages are waking up and populations are saying, we actually want to take our future into our own hands. We want to do something different. And, if such villages get in contact with Jen, there's support and facilitated processes where the village designs their own, you could call it community resilience plan, their own plan for the future. So this happened in Senegal, and there was a network of 45 villages going quite strongly as eco-villages coming together in Jen, Senegal. And the government of Senegal became aware of this and saw that these villages were able to thrive in a way that other villages, even with development aid, were not able to thrive. And building on that, then developed this national program for the transition of 14,000 traditional villages to eco-villages, which is currently being implemented at a, it's currently, I think there are at 200 eco-villages now in Senegal. And in December, we actually co-hosted a global eco-village summit together with the Senegalese government, which was an exciting experience for Jen and for the Senegalese government. But we had the Prime Minister there who expressed his and the President's allegiance to the eco-village concept and their wish to spread it amongst the African Union. We had the Minister of Environment there, and Youssou N'Dour, who's quite a well-known international musician from Senegal, who expressed his wish to become a goodwill ambassador of Jen. So it's very interesting when we have these bottom-up, top-down approaches being merged, many question marks, many tension points, but very, very helpful for the spreading of sustainable solutions in the world. So there's a lot of hope there, Bruce, and we see that more, for instance, just a while ago, we also had a network of 40 Portuguese villages reaching out to Jen and saying, actually, we find that we're not doing very well. We want to learn more about renewable energy, local production of food. We want to really come up to speed with the newest technologies. We want to create ecotourism in our area. Can you support us? Can you help us? Would it be interesting for us to become acknowledged as eco-villages? So these are really interesting conversations, and very similar processes are currently happening in the north of Thailand, where a whole region has decided to become an eco-region and again follow eco-village transition strategies. So there's interesting stuff happening out there. The Hurdal eco-villages in Norway that I was briefly speaking about, that has developed very much hand in hand with the local council. Actually, the whole council, so the local authority, the traditional council, has decided that not only are they proud that they have an eco-village in their communal area, but also that they want to now transition the whole valley to an eco-valley and only build zero-emission houses in the future, and bring a much larger focus on waste recycling, etc. So there's a lot more collaboration happening and dialogue happening between the different sectors of society, civil society, NGO, government, and even the corporate world, and of course academia and education than ever before. And I think the most creative solutions are actually currently being developed in those edges where that dialogue between the different sectors is taking place. And this is where true incentive for transition of regions and societies to more resilient places, I think, will grow from.
Wow.
Nice.
Sounds very encouraging. Very encouraging. Now, there's a question I have for you from my list here. It's important to me. I think you touched on it with this practical examination of the politics of eco-village development. You've got some projects listed on your site. It's under funded projects. I counted at least 20 funded projects. Are these ones that they're coming from government-sponsored funds?
Oh, this is hugely varied. You know, we have foundations that support. We have government. You know, we've just got for instance, a fund from the Scottish government for a project that is about greening schools for sustainable community development in Zambia. So there is a whole network of greening schools that is very active in Africa in the GEN networks. So it's and then of course we have lots of projects that are funded through empowered fundraising, so through lots of individuals saying this is something that's truly worthwhile. You know, I want to support communities on the ground, especially in the global south. I want to become a friend of GEN. So there's a page on the GEN website where, as a friend of GEN, you can donate to the GEN networks and support different projects also. So there's many different streams of funding. As I said before, you know, diversity makes us strong.
Are there any governments officially supporting GEN?
Well,
an organization. I mean, is that something you endorse, or has that developed?
We have funding through government agencies, like I just said, the climate funds of the German Foreign Ministry, the Environmental Ministry in Germany. We have funds now from the Scottish government. We have funds coming through the Senegalese government. So there are government funds. So there are some government funds, and at the same time, of course, we are careful also to stay very true to our values and to be very critical about which funds work for us.
Right. And do you actually receive the money, or do you just manage the money for the projects? How does it work at a basic, like, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm just curious as to how that would work, because there's probably different types of donors.
I mean, for any NGO at the moment, it's really hard to get core funding for the actual organization, you know. And I think GEN, as many organizations, many NGOs, is really strongly a volunteer organization. You know, most of our core funding still comes from this beautiful foundation, Gaia Trust, in Denmark, that was founded with the explicit goal to support this kind of grassroots approaches. And Gaia Trust has been a faithful supporter of GEN over the past 20 years, and also of the Gaia Education, the educational arm which grew out of GEN and is delivering eco-village design educations now in 35 countries, and also through university, even on master's degrees. So that's also something interesting to look at. So we have that foundation that supports us on a more continuous level. But then there's individual projects, like, you know, the German Foreign Ministry has funded 4 big conferences in Africa over the past 4 years. And that funding flows through the GEN accounts. You know, we manage the project, we invite the people, you know, we manage the funds, and then we write reports. So there's very little core funding that comes from that for the actual organization, but it's such a support to our network that it's a wonderful way of allowing more funds to flow where they should be flowing.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking in terms of practicalities of our own goals here with Bruce. In developing this new eco village or intentional community, would you advise us to join GEN? Would it offer us some credibility, some advantages in order to getting funding?
Absolutely, of course.
But if I may, though, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that a delimitation has to be made here. I mean, I believe Kosha is talking about eco-villages for indigenous populations in distress, and obviously there would be government funds for that. They've always been around. We had the Canadian CETA, was it called, Brian? The Canadian International Development Agency?
Absolutely, yeah.
But what we're talking about, our eco-village is a bunch of sort of, middle-class North Americans electing voluntary simplicity. I think our fund, and for me, it's a point of pride and a point of spiritual discipline that the eco-village we creates itself out of the money it puts into it from the founders and sustains itself. Because I think when you get to the level of human consciousness or sentience as we have it, God has disdain for things that are not self-sustaining, if I may put it that way.
I fully agree, and it's also for other eco-villages, at the core is really also a sense of healthy social entrepreneurship that brings our love for the planet into, for instance, there's a beautiful eco-village emerging in the Gambia, and at the core of it they have a compressed earth brick company, where they do green building now all over the Gambia. And the same actually for the Norwegian example, they also developed a green building company. So there's ways to raise funds and be very intelligent. But, just thinking of the farm, for instance, in Tennessee, they ran their own support network for communities in the global south for many years. So there's many wonderful things that we can do to serve others that are not as fortunate as ourselves. And we, in the GEN networks, I think the North-South reconciliation process and solidarity process, and also actually the East-West dialogues that are happening are I think, crucially important. And we have a lot of twinning of eco-villages starting to happen now between villages in the north and the south, for instance, where there's actually really mutual learning and mutual support happening. It's not just one way, there's support on so many different levels.
Could you just, as a kind of exercise, a thinking out loud exercise, could you organize the 4 elements in order of importance for the survival of an eco-village? My first one would be water, but I don't know where to go from there.
Interesting question. Well, we've definitely found that water at the moment is the one that we're focusing on, even symbolically. We've got a woman-to-woman support network, which is called the River of Life. We've got a project in Palestine that's called Waters of Hope. And there's a lot of focus on communities living by rivers, becoming caretakers of rivers, just because the water is a symbol of the communication and connectedness between everything on the planet. And so I think you're absolutely right that water is really at the core of or very symbolic for GEN. And but then, of course, in the end, it's always about a balance between the 4 elements, and healthy soils, healthy energy supplies, healthy fire, and healthy spiritual. I was even for a moment, I was wondering whether you meant between what we call the 4 dimensions of sustainability. So I'm not sure I would like to arrange them more than what you've already done, you know? Yeah.
So, sure. Yeah, great. I can't get past water either. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But water seems the foundation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my one of my guests, again, I mentioned earlier, John Apsley, he thinks that mind is water, that our minds are actually in the water in our bodies. It's quite fascinating, his analysis. I can share the interview with you if you'd like. I can send you
great.
E3. Well, we're getting near the end of this of our program, and I just wanted to give Kosha an opportunity to talk about ways that people can support and ways that they can get involved more with Jen, because I mean, it's just an incredible resource. I mean, it's just
yeah.
I was so impressed when I found it. It just blew me away.
Great, thanks so much, Brian. Well, I think there's many different ways. One way is really, what is important is to just build community wherever you are. That's the first thing, and that doesn't directly benefit Jen in any way, but it's the same movement. That's, we're all in this together. So start building community wherever you are, look around, connect to the nature around you, support life in all its forms, support living creatures, see how can you enrich the ecosystems and the social systems around you. Is there a neighbor that you could connect more deeply to? Can you connect to the people in the shop? Can you go to the cultural center in your area and support community? That's like the first thing. Then I think it's super interesting to find out, are there eco-villages in your area? And you can visit the global maps of Jen and find out, what kind of eco-villages are close to you. Maybe you know of an eco-village that's not on the map yet. In the USA, also the not the Foundation of Intentional Communities is really, really strong. So look at their maps, but find out about places close to you and go and visit them. It's a great, yeah?
I think Bruce wants to sneak in a question.
No, just a statement. A collaboration, if you will. Most of our neighbors are traditional Costa Rican farmers. As you go up the road, up the mountain, and then when you get to the top of the mountain, the end of the road where we are, our only neighbors are a 3,200 strong Talamanca Native Reserve, which is one of the oldest indigenous peoples in Central America. So we have a fascinating, functioning eco-village right beside us. Yeah, exactly.
And if you connect up to the CASA networks, which is the South American, the Latin American Gen networks, there's a lot of indigenous communities that are part of that network, so it might be even easier for you to reach out to the indigenous community that is your neighbor through the support of the CASA networks than directly, so I'd really invite you to find out more about that. But
is that also on your site, this network?
Sorry?
Is this network, is it a part of Gen? Is it like
yes, totally. It's the Latin American Gen network.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. Just that.
House in Spanish.
Absolutely. And another thing that I would really invite people to do is to go to the gen.ecovillage.org website and actually sign up for the newsletter, because that way, 4 times a year, you don't get any more mail, but 4 times a year, you get a fantastic, rich newsletter that brings you hope and solutions from all 4 corners of the world. And so that's really good to do. And I also want to mention the solution library that we're currently developing in Gen, which is already quite rich and will become a lot richer in the coming months, where communities are uploading.
Okay. Sounds like we're nearing the end here, Kosha.
Exactly.
I'll get you on when your new book's out. And
Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Hi, this is Bo.
And this is Rocco.
And the Bo and Rocco Show is here to offer insight into legal and lawful remedies. Our goal is to remain free and help others remain free in an ever-increasing police-like state. With the help of our guests, we try to answer questions such as what went wrong and what can we do about it.
So tune into Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com Wednesday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to listen to the Bo and Rocco Show.
You don't need to expect us.
We're already here.
Revolution Radio.
Every Tuesday evening on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, we present our goddess spiritual warrior, Kathy Bilski.
I command. I call to the architect of the universe's divine creators and ask for permission to quantum leap the world in all life forms on all planes and dimensions, seen and unseen, connected with planet Earth, to let us go beyond our known potential into the greatest unknown golden age the universes and worlds and all planets have ever experienced.
Kathy teaches the spiritual truth so that you may create a better life and be able to make positive changes for yourself and for the planet. She helps us remember that we are not powerless, but very creative spiritual beings having an Earth experience. Time to quantum leap into the age of divine enlightenment and let Kathy provide you with the tools of knowledge you need to awaken spiritually. That's the Quantum Leap Show. Let Light Unite every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio, Studio B.
Did you ever feel